All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. And the EPL is back. It's almost like it really wasn't gone, because it feels like it ended a week ago, basically because we had a wild packed summer of football and soccer, and it was exhausting just kind of watching it all. And I can't imagine what the players feel like or that actually played in those summer tournaments, but and to only return after basically 3 weeks of rest or so, so limited preseason. Some managers have even gone public saying that the squads aren't even ready fitness wise, which we'll get to. Uh, but unlike what I normally do, as far as just kind of a normal kind of rundown on what happened. I am going to switch things up a bit because I didn't finish my actual preview for the season. So what I'm going to do is just kind of a mini rundown of just kind of what happened. If people already kind of followed it, they already know. So this might be a little boring for them, uh, as opposed to just kind of an in-depth look like I normally do. But I'll get back to the regular formula next week. But I will. I do want to kind of finish the rest of my preview because I didn't get to a lot of the teams that did kind of. Yeah, a feature. Well, I mean, everyone kind of featured, but that kind of gets to it. So kind of leading off, the leading story is just going to be just kind of a rundown of what happened, and I will get started with the first game that happened that kicked us off on Friday. And so Man United began the season almost exactly how it ended last year. To be honest, now the first half was all right, and it was borderline, really good. Fulham were pressed into some mistakes. United created a number of pretty quality looks for Bruno Fernandes, and really the only reason why maybe United didn't have a lead was because of some pretty nice stops by Bird Leno. Now, some of that was Leno not necessarily being the best with his feet. Fulham had some interesting moments, I guess we can say. Smith Rowe looked quite comfortable on the ball, but you didn't really understand what the entire what the dynamic really was. It seemed like he wasn't really playing on the left. It was more like Iwobi. Iwobi didn't really feel comfortable there. Fulham now don't have William anymore. When I get to Fulham's kind of preview, this will be what I kind of focus on a little bit. They have changed things up a little bit. They also started Adama Traore, and Adama had some pretty nice moments, both in the first half and second half. And it's just they weren't able to really create anything other than a few danger moments. And whether Smith Rowe was going to play through the middle, I feel like he could maybe actually be the option on the left, and maybe find a way to use Iwobi a little bit closer, a little bit more into the central part of the field because Fulham don't have Paulinho anymore, and that kind of showed up a little bit as well. Saso Lukic did as good as he could. Andres Pereira, they tried playing him in the pivot role, didn't really work out, to be honest, and then uh, so Fulham just kind of Fulham look a little bit like a work in progress, I guess we can say, and so they the Man United were the better side in the first half. The second half, though, things did change, and Fulham definitely had their moments. A couple of times, really, they were able to push Man United into a couple of mistakes, and if not for some poor decision making, first by Pereira, where it looked like he had a 2v1, and just instead of finding a way to get a pass around Harry Maguire, just basically passed it right into his foot. So that stopped things, and then there was another time when Adama had a counter. Adama probably made the wrong decision, and Man United were able to just kind of escape here and there. The second half was a lot more chaotic. It was a lot more like we saw last season, where just the game was just crazy open, and it didn't look like it was it was necessarily going good. And then Ten Hag did make some changes. Took off Diallo. Diallo again I thought he played pretty well, but he gets hooked, and on comes Garnacho, and Garnacho really did kind of change things for the better, which is unfortunate a little bit for Diallo because Diallo's played well, but Garnacho for the last 2 games, both this one and in the Community Shield, has kind of run up to him a little bit. And it is Garnacho that has the kind of final ball, that came into the box. Even before that, he was giving uh, uh, Anthony Robinson a lot of fits. And there was one time when Man United had the counter. Garnacho had the square ball, tried to get it to Rashford, and if not for a very good defending by Kenny Tete, that probably would have been the first goal as well. So Garnacho came on and just offered something a little bit different as the game really did kind of open up. it was open. It was open for both teams, and so someone with Garnacho a little bit more kind of ahead of the ball than necessarily ball to feet. And Garnacho was enjoying himself, and then on came Joshua Xerxes, and that really was just kind of everything was kind of set up for him to kind of be the hero, and lo and behold, he was. So that was kind of fitting as well. It's and to be honest, the way that Man United have set up the last 2 games in a row, so we saw this in the Community Shield game where it was really it was almost a 4-2-2-2 kind of shape, but it was really what it really was a box four. Box four midfield where but they were trying it with Mason Mount and Bruno through the middle. Mason Mount can do that job in the beginning, but when you eventually you need to have someone into the box, and Man United were struggling with that really. Bruno was the one that was making the runs, and that was really kind of it. And so when they finally brought Joshua Xerxes on, he was able to do the build-up. He was able to play, uh, you know, uh, 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 to play like a leg up man, like they wanted, and then also had the legs to get in the box when the cross came. And finally, someone was in the box. There was also McTominay that was there. If not for Xerxes, McTominay might have even scored as well. So Ten Hag did make some subs. To his credit, Garnacho played well once he came on. Xerxes gets the goal, so he was a good sub, and McTominay was at least getting forward into the box. So it's one of those things where again you can ride Ten Hag a little bit, but his subs did kind of change things. Uh, One thing though you looked at, and it was Harry Maguire starting another game. It was Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire just last week. They do look a little. They don't necessarily look the full product or the finished product yet. One thing you can say is uh, Mazraoui, you got the start on the right. He had a pretty solid debut, but by playing him, they moved Diego Dallo over to the left side. Dallo was basically their player of the season last year on the right. So I don't necessarily know if that unsettles them. It maybe makes them a little bit better defensively. De Ligt was able to come on and get some minutes. Lisandro Martinez was able to play again, and he really does give Man United a little bit more steel than they've had. Also, Casemiro. This is 2 games now in a row where Casemiro has played quite well. To be honest, I don't really know how long that can sustain itself. But he is, he's because of Mano and is able to kind of handle a little bit more of the defensive duties. We saw Casemiro actually being the one that was further ahead, and he was the one that was actually supplying those balls into Bruno, and he could have had 2 assists. To be honest, he was also looking quite good whenever Man United had some corner kicks or had some set piece delivery, because he got pretty close on that too. So it's maybe not the worst thing for Ten Hag to at least see Man United not necessarily play their best game, but they were able to get 3 points. That's all that really matters. Survive and advance. It doesn't really matter how you do it. Man United last year were the king of doing this, being outplayed and still somewhat scraping by a result. So. Were there some positive things for Man United fans to look at? I do think Xerxes offers Ten Hag a lot of what he probably wants in a striker, maybe more than what Rasmus Højlund does. So I don't really know how you would necessarily play Højlund instead, because there were a lot of times where last year uh, Man United were not able to get him involved at all. And if Højlund got the ball and didn't create a shot for himself, he really wasn't involved. Xerxes was dropping in and was basically an additional midfielder, so that allowed Man United to kind of outnumber Fulham a little bit in the middle. He regained a little bit of control where the game really was stretched and kind of chaotic. And he's 6'4", and he's got some legs to him as well. So he's a big target into the box, and he's got a little pace to him. So it was an interesting signing when they made it, and we'll see if Xerxes is actually a little bit more featured than maybe we would have expected. We'll have to see. Also, Bruno Fernandes, another really good game for him. It's unlucky he wasn't able to score, but for the most part, that's not that's him getting into those positions. You figure he will normally put those away, and his work rate has been quite good as well in these 2 games. So just the only kind of negative would maybe be I don't really not get where Mason Mount's going to fit in. I think I talked about that last week. And maybe the other one is in the second half, the midfield really did get stretched. Casemiro and Kobe Mano were kind of forced to do a little too much ground by themselves. Any kind of turnover, either it was Adamo or it was Pereira, it was very easy for Fulham to actually just run past them. And then you had that situation where again, Harry Maguire is too far away from the play. And it's not like Mateus de Ligt coming in is going to necessarily fix this either, though maybe Lenny Euro would. Lenny Euro would. So Man United are still a work in progress, and as I'm saying that, it does feel like they've made another bid for Manuel Ugarte. And Manuel Ugarte, to me, is basically what Casemiro used to be for Real Madrid. And what I mean by that is someone that will absolutely kind of fix a lot of this problem where Man United are just too open way, way too much. Manuel Ugarte will be in position. He has the legs to recover. He makes up a lot of ground. He's not really the best with the ball, and the way Real Madrid were able to get away with that is they had people like Cruz and Modric, where he wasn't, Casemiro was never really part of their build-up structure at Madrid. Ugarte is kind of the same way. He's not really the best on the ball. He can still. It's not necessarily like he's a donkey, but it's just you'll see when he if he does make the move, they probably won't try to build with him. So Man United to do Ugarte and Kobe Mano together. That would be because you possibly see what they could line up with. It could be Emmanuel Ugarte. It could be a Kobe Mano midfield pivot. And then you have the box four with a Bruno and maybe a Xerxes. And then ahead, you have either a Garnacho or a Rashford, or you have a Diallo or a Garnacho, wherever they want to play Garnacho. And you have either a 4-2-2-2 shape or a 4-2, right, or basically the box four shape with the two ahead. However way you want to kind of categorize it. Uh, that would at least make Man. And if you did that, you could probably play a little bit more of a mid block than necessarily being a high pressing side, which is basically what they've started to do now. It's not. I don't think that's going to necessarily win them anything. I don't know if it would get them back into the top four, but it would make them significantly more consistent. And I think maybe that's what Man United fans really want. They have spent enough where they probably do want to demand top four. But this is the first time where we're 2 weeks now where we've been able to see this side, and I didn't see. Basically, I just saw get the ball to Bruno in open games and pray he's able to deliver. Pray that all these teams that have basically runaway chances on you, pray that they mess up and basically or Nana makes a save. There's a little more structure in place slightly. It could still it could still be obviously gotten through. A team like Fulham didn't necessarily look that strong, especially when they brought their bench on, and I think that was maybe kind of the mistake a little bit that Marcus Silva made. Is once he took off Adama Traore, they just lost any kind of threat. He took off Munez to bring on Raul Jimenez. Just again, for just Fulham, just kind of lost any kind of threat that they had. And it happened in a time when it took Smith Rowe on as well, and it happened at a time when Fulham maybe actually did have a chance there. But when I get to Fulham later on, that'll be the thing that I really do focus on a little bit more. Is Fulham's depth just does not look at all like it can withstand a season right now. I would actually be a little worried if I'm a Fulham fan, but there's still time. They're apparently linked to Rian Cherokee. Uh, a Lyon player that was part of the French Olympic team. Plays on the right, kind of cuts in. He has a little Eden Hazard to his dribble. He's a fun player on the ball. We'll see if they were able to get that across the line. That could maybe help them out a little bit. It looks like they've tried to bring in Joachim Anderson of Crystal Palace to try to shore up the back line a little bit, because I really don't know if losing Tosin and bringing playing Usa Diop is necessarily the fix either. So Fulham probably do need to make some changes before the end of the season. I do like Marco Silva as a coach. He seems to. I say that I always want to downplay him, want to discount him out, and he always proves me wrong. So that's why I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But just roster wise, that did look a little rough. So that is Man United, and that is Fulham. Something for Man United fans to maybe be hopeful about, especially if they get that Ugarte transfer over the line, especially when they were able to play Lenny Euro, the 18-year-old that it looks like he's only going to be out till October. And you have a Euro, you have Lisandro Martinez that can play either at center back or maybe they try him at left back like we saw in the Community Shield, and you can play him with Mateus Delict all of a sudden, and you've got Mazura, you've got Dallo. All of a sudden, Man United look a little bit more of an outlet that maybe could kind of build up out of the back. You could probably hide Manuel Ugarte in that kind of situation. You've got players that would be comfortable on the ball. You've got some pace on the wings with Diallo, Garnacho, and maybe Rashford, and you've got Xerxes that can kind of if they play this kind of box role, maybe him and Bruno can work together. I was a little worried about that, but at least we've gotten a couple. At least in this game, we saw that it wasn't necessarily an issue. Well, they weren't necessarily both making the same runs. When one was running for the ball, the other was running for the box, running to the box. Bruno has started to show that to me. The last two games, Bruno has been making these runs forward. He has been trying to run without the ball, than necessarily showing forward or being upset when he's not getting it played. So there's a little maturation there, and so we'll see what Man United are. I am not going to be able to give you a prediction on where I think they'll finish. If they do kind of play like this and they do get that Ugarte thing across the line, I will say that if nothing else, they'll be better than they were. I know that's kind of cheaping it out. So that is Man United and Fulham, and so we move on to Saturday, and we get Arne Slot's Liverpool's debut. So Zubimendi soap opera. It continues. So the only six was Indo on the team sheet, and he doesn't even start. So we see Alexis McAllister, we see Szoboszlai, and we see Ryan Gravenberch instead. And no, it was not perfect, but man, was it good in the second half. And that kind of gets us to where we start with in this game. The first half was very less than stellar. Second half was sublime. I think they said 15 shots, 6 on target, something like 6 big chances overall in the game. I think they all came in the second half. 2 goals from Jota and Salah. First, great build-up play by Konate. Konate basically plays a ball to Gravenberch, who draws 2 players onto him, plays it out to Trent Alexander-Arnold, and they had this player that would that was played in midfield, and he was doing an amazing job shadowing Trent in the first half. In the second half, Liverpool were doing a little bit better of a job to move the ball quickly, where he wasn't able to necessarily shadow Trent nearly as much. And by basically Trent Alexander-Arnold makes a little run to Konate, and that drags him over, that drags his midfielder over. And that allowed that little passing lane for Gravenberch. It's a great ball by Konate. It's a great collection by Gravenberch. And then Gravenberch doesn't just necessarily get rid of the ball as fast as possible. He takes a couple touches, and what that does is that draws another player onto him, and that leaves Alexander-Arnold completely free. And then, after Alexander-Arnold is able to play in Salah just one times it, and then Salah's able to turn around the fullback that was I think it was someone Leaf that was guarding him, and basically Salah's in behind, and he had Jota for the square ball, and finally Liverpool didn't blow a simple 2v1 breakaway, and Jota's able to apply the finish. And then minutes later, Szoboszlai with a very nice slip ball into the box finds Salah, who's able to tuck it in under the keeper for the second. And then after that, or even before that, it felt like the goal was coming. They were much better in the second half. There was a Diaz miss from close where the way they fashioned that chance was quite slippery football as well. It was Trent Alexander-Arnold was able to again get kind of free. Diaz or Andy Robinson had the ball all the way on one side of the field, and a nice little switch was able to find Ipswich a little out of shape. And it's because they moved it from one side of the field to the other. Ipswich weren't able to really get back in their shape, and just a really nice quick ball by Alexander-Arnold was able to play Szoboszlai. Szoboszlai is able to drag 2 people onto him, and when you usually do that, when you're playing man to man kind of defense, and you use one of them to mark a second, so you got 2v1, that leaves the other person open, and so Szoboszlai is able to drag people on him, and then it has a nice little turn and touch to play Alexander-Arnold head, gets Alexander-Arnold the ball on the run, which is always good. And Alexander-Arnold was able to play that forward ball. So we saw it. We saw it for the Salah goal, and we saw it even beforehand. We saw him play a really good ball. He played in the Diaz, and then after a cut, after a little, or it was either Diaz or Jota, after a nice little cross into the box, Alexander-Arnold had a little touch, and then basically Diaz had to make a quick decision with the goalkeeper kind of coming out. He had and his touch just kind of went a little header, a little over the goal. And then even before that, there was a chance where Jota was able to get basically a free header after a fantastic ball by Alexander Arnold again, and just Liverpool started to just really just live in the Ipswich area. It was such a significant difference from the first half. So Jota missed earlier, and I was about to say, oh no, that's something that Darwin Núñez would have screwed up on. But then Jota showed what he offers, and I think I said it last week or whenever I did my Liverpool kind of preview. I do feel had Liverpool not lost Jota when they did versus Brentford last February, Liverpool probably might have actually won the league, to be honest, because all of those moments that they lost or that they kept missing the second half of the season last year, it was because I couldn't put away chances, and that's something that Jota has always been able to do. So I don't necessarily know if Darwin Núñez would have been able to put it away after Salah put it on a plate because I saw him screw it up last season. Not to really go at him again. I don't want to be negative. So that is where we were, and they created chances even after that, and just why was things so much different from the first half to the second half? First half, they had build-up issues left and right. So Robinson and Allison, to kind of talk about. So Ipswich were pressing very, very high, very brave. Liverpool could not play through it. They could not find anytime they tried to find people in midfield, whether it was Alexis McAllister, Gravenberch, or even Slabashai, or even Alexander Arnold. Immediately, someone was on their shoulder, and they didn't have time to turn. They weren't able to really do anything. So they were trying to go long, and a couple times they were able to find Salah in behind, but Salah wasn't able to. Salah never really had anyone kind of next to him to do any kind of square ball. And that was all Liverpool could do. They were forced to just kind of play hopeful long balls, and for the most part, Ipswich were handling that pretty well. And they were also doing very good job to when someone got on the ball. If not, there was immediate pressure. Most of the times, they were just going backwards. And so Robinson did not play a whole lot of preseason. It was Tsimikas, and there possibly he was dealing with some kind of injury issue. He had a long Euros. Apparently, maybe he was carrying something into Euros as well. Well, he didn't really have a long Euros. Scotland were eliminated, but he played in Euros and apparently picked up something, and so he didn't really play any of this preseason, and Liverpool are playing a little bit differently now. And it looks like Robinson really did struggle. They were trying to use, they weren't using him as a bombing fullback like they usually did. They were kind of doing I mean, they did this a little bit last season, to be fair, but they were trying to play him in almost like a back three, kind of, an additional center back, just an additional player to build possession from the back. And Robinson does not have a right foot; he's very left foot dominated, and it almost felt like Ipswich just knew that Robinson was the pressing trigger, to be honest, and was Allison. And so there was a lot of times where the ball was just living in Liverpool's area, and they weren't able to really get forward at all. And it was just one of the things to say is when you think of Jurgen Klopp kind of football, one of the players that really has just kind of exemplified that over the years has been Andrew Robinson. And it is possible the different change in system, if there is one player that's maybe, set to maybe lose the most out of that if he can't, change his game, is possibly going to be him. Because man, did he really look out of place. And it's really unfortunate to see because he's been one of my favorite players over the years. But you know, uh, Jurgen Klopp was asking Robinson to be a bombing fullback, to always own the wing, basically, to make those runs and to basically always be able to get a cross off. But that leads to a lot of possible transition and turnover, and it doesn't really feel like that's the kind of football that Arne Slot is asking for. He wants a little bit more control. Now, when the passes are on, when the lanes are open, when the runs are on, he's still wanting them to be direct, and so it's not just possession for possession's sake. So there is a little give here, but Robinson was struggling, and I don't really know if it was just a preseason thing. He hasn't had any time to play, or what, but it was rough. The other interesting thing was Arne Slot had the first kind of after the first half because it was first. I think they had three shots. They were outshot by Ipswich. There was even a couple moments where Liverpool had a couple corner kicks, and Ipswich were the team that actually had the better looks that forced either Allison into a save or I think it was Kwanzaa that had to make a pretty big block, and so Liverpool were not good in the first half. I think they had 3 shots just total, so they were outshot by and they had, like, 15 in the second half. Uh, so that was just kind of it, so things were not really going great, and this is happening after a pretty solid preseason, and it wasn't necessarily like, the problem was necessarily in midfield. It wasn't really necessarily like, Gravenberch or Alexis or whatnot were out of position. A lot of Ipswich moments really came from basically Robinson just either having a really poor touch and losing possession, or there were maybe a couple free kicks that Ipswich had, a couple free headers. That there was one by Jacob Graves that Allison had to make a pretty good save on, uh, and a couple corner kicks where they were able to just kind of catch Liverpool out offsides or off guard. So it's not really like, they were really missing kind of a holder. That really wasn't the problem, and I guess you could say maybe someone like a Zubimendi, or if he had been available, maybe would have been able to do some, better turns than necessarily Gravenberch, but Gravenberch was incredible in the second half. But I'm kind of, rambling on a little bit. So Arne Slot has to make a change. First big game. Things aren't really going great. How is he going to handle this? Is he going to ride things out, or is he going to make changes immediately? And he does make a change immediately. And I was wondering, does he maybe hook Slobberslide for someone like a Harvey Elliott? Does he maybe take Diaz off? Does he take Andy Robinson off? And he did the one change that I just was not expecting to be honest. But the way that he came about after the in the post game, for his reasons. Now it's not really great to necessarily throw a player as young as Kwanzaa under the bus, and hopefully he doesn't take it personal. I mean, he definitely seemed to like he was upset. But what Arne Slot did was he took off Joel Kwanzaa, who I basically was assuming was maybe the best player of that half. He had a couple really big blocks, and he wasn't necessarily bad on the ball. He was quite comfortable with it. But what he was doing is he was losing his 1v1 duels with Ipswich really tall attacker Liam Delap, Roy Delap's son, who former Man City kind of player. He's now I guess a Luton or an Ipswich kind of striker, and he was getting by Kwanzaa. He was baiting Kwanzaa to take him on, and Kwanzaa isn't necessarily as good as Kanate in those kind of defending those wide areas. He was also kind of losing a few kind of aerial duels, and so Slot saw that, and basically he wanted to bring Kanate on to just kind of handle Liam Delap, and basically everything kind of clashed or consolidated with everything just kind of changed with that change. And it also helped out that Liverpool was significantly better in at finding, getting the ball to the best players on the ball, having those moments when the game was a little bit more open, having a way to have a little bit more control on the game, but also to be able to move the ball with pace much quicker than they were. So there was a mix. There was a mix of things. I don't necessarily know if it was necessarily just taking Kwanzaa off, but obviously it didn't hurt. The other thing that helped was finding Trent Alexander the ball a little bit more, where he could be a little bit more dangerous. And man, was he special in that second half as well. And so I mean, fewer mistakes in the buildup also helped. Ipswich could not go man to man anymore. It felt like they were sitting off. They were pressing so well in that first half. It was impressive. It really was. But to do that, it looked like they got tired. And like one of the things that's unfortunate is when you go full metal, full pedal to metal, as you can say, you usually need to have some award for that, because if not, eventually either you sub an entire team out and bring a second squad in, or just the legs eventually do kind of get to you. And they weren't able to. They did have a couple moments, but they weren't able to really make anything count. And so they were trying to. It felt like they were still trying to press, and the unfortunate thing for them is they didn't change how their back line was, and just a couple balls over the top really did set the two goals. The first ball where Salah was able to run behind, I believe it was Leif Davies, who was doing a very good job in the first half, but unfortunately, Salah was able to get to him 2 times. And then the second goal really came from Van Dijk having a long ball over the top to Salah as well as a way to just kind of get the ball into the box, and then Salah was able to find Szoboszlai, and Szoboszlai had a really nice return ball that was able to feed in where the keeper wasn't able to come out, and Salah was able to slip it in. Uh, so that was all positive. Ryan Gravenberch was going to be a topic of conversation regardless of how the game went. He transferred into Paul Pogba on the ball in that second half. Now, that is probably going a little bit too far, but he really was good. I don't really know if I trust him over the course of the season. I think I've already mentioned that before. Like him and Alexis, I don't really know if that is good enough versus like the really big teams, but at least on the ball and Szoboszlai, making up that third. All three are really good at reading the game. All three were really quick at having the quick 1-2s to get the ball to the more kind of attack minded players, and just again just the way that second half went. They only scored two. It probably could have been five or six. Now that does kind of remind me a little bit of last season. Salah scoring on the opening weekend as like he normally does. He also kind of assisted, so that was solid. So the rough start to the Arne Slot era, but very very solid in the end. So a couple things to note is not afraid to make early sub changes. Apparently, he also just kind of just immediately analyzed the game. He said we weren't winning enough duels when they're pressing us 1v1. It almost becomes like an NBA game. Someone's got to beat a man 1v1 when that's happening. And so he brought on Kanate, and that just kind of had a little effect. Once Liam Diop wasn't able to beat Kanate, that had seemed to just kind of destroy their whole kind of game plan. So credit to Slot, but at the same time, it is kind of it was a little rush or harsh to see the youngster Kwanzaa being on the bench, looking a little little down, a little disappointed. So that's just kind of just it's not really it's not really something to really harp on, or at least hopefully. But so one thing I am trying to say here is it looks like he's not afraid to make changes, and looks like he's a tactical manager. So it could be the one thing that maybe Klopp had that had against him. Now, one thing that Klopp was always good at is making sure that he never had a bad locker room. So hopefully Slot was able to pick Kwanzaa's head up. I'm gonna assume he was, because I read that a lot of his former teammates did sing his praises in Feinhardt. So we'll see how that goes. The idea of the early buildup is interesting because it almost seems like it's very De Zerbi like in a lot of it is almost gimmicky. And what I mean by that is it's trying to bait you to sin because they have like 6, 7 guys very, very deep in their own end. It's dangerous because if anyone plays a bad pass, obviously the other team's going to be in. So that's why it's good to have people that are very good on the ball. That is something that you can say with Gravenberch and Alexis and Szoboszlai and the like, is everyone is comfortable with the ball at the feet. Everyone is comfortable getting it on the turn and immediately making a decision quickly. But there is some risk here, but risk with reward. And so what I mean by that is, what I mean by it possibly being a little gimmicky is if you're going to play man be man, you've got to play really, really high up. And so if the run is on, there's going to be a lot of space for because you're going to have to play basically your center back, your back line, in the basically the halfway line, and a ball over the top for someone like a Salah could be on. If Darwin Núñez is starting to play and he gets into the side, he is going to get in behind so many times. Now he could be offsides. He needs to kind of work on that. But it feels like he would feast once he gets involved in this. So yeah, I'm just, talking up Jota and what he was able to do. If Darwin Núñez is able to get involved in this, I feel like he is going to rack up a pretty big number of goals. Just especially if Liverpool are able to get the lead and teams have to actually press them, because again, this is going to be quite exciting. Now, how they break teams down, it also looks like they're going to be really fun doing that as well, because again, that's what happens when you have a lot of players that have a final ball in them. There wasn't a whole lot of getting into the final third and just kind of being completely out of ideas and just crossing the ball and just being hopeful. hopeful that something would happen. There was a lot of purpose and intent in what they were trying to do. So again, it's only one game. I'm not going to be a reactionary. I'm not going to go overboard, but it was good. It was fun to watch, and I can say it's different. It is a little bit different, and they can still be direct, and so that was the one thing I was really concerned about when I kept hearing people saying that he is a possession based manager, and you can see where maybe more the De Zerbi comparison maybe works than necessarily a Pep Guardiola. So we'll see how this goes over the course of the season. It's quite exciting to watch at least. And so that said, the squad could also improve. I mentioned Robinson possibly highlighted that. Don't really love the idea of Joe Gomez possibly leaving because that means they're going to be only three center backs healthy. And I remember this happening in 2021 when after Loveland left, they figured someone like Matip, Joe Gomez, and Van Dijk would be more than enough for an entire season. And we got to November where all three were out for the year, and they went into that December/January where Liverpool actually had they were top of the table, and then when it got back to March or April, they were behind Everton in like eighth place because of that. So they were playing Jordan Henderson and Fabinho at center back at one point. So I don't love the idea because Van Dijk is still off that ACL or still off that ACL. You never know if that could possibly rear its head or not. Kwanzaa. Another thing too is Kanate is never really available for a full season as well. Kwanzaa and Kanate are both right-footed as well, so I would like them to see them at least bring in another center back. If you're going to lose Joe Gomez, it looks like they're about to send out Sepp Vandenberg as well to Brentford. That could be something to follow as well. There's still Darwin Nunes to factor in. There's Gakpo to factor in. So that means it still feels so a center back. I would like to at least look at getting. So I'm not even mentioning the six. I do feel like they could improve there. That's been the most important position for the last few games. But at least again, the Ryan Gravenberch did not hurt in this game. They do still have Indo, but it doesn't look like Slot really rates Indo. We'll see if this backfires or not. I need to see this first versus an actual good team, and we're going to see this versus United coming up soon. That's like the second game or third game in the schedule. Uh, it is Joe Gomez leaving possibly as well because that's a center back, that's a left back potentially, and a right back all leaving you. That was their utility player. So there are still concerns. The squad isn't really deep enough. You don't still have a solid backup, in my opinion. Whether the idea is trying Szoboszlai and changing it up a little bit, he is 2-footed, so he could possibly play there. Uh, I don't really like the idea of it being Elliott, but maybe that's the idea. Maybe they just assume that Szoboszlai can play there, or maybe Diaz can play there, or Jota if Jota is able to last the season. Uh, but I can say the patterns of play. It was different. And again, I don't really know how good Ipswich is going to be, but Ipswich looked like quite a good, organized, competitive pressing team. And if teams are going to press Liverpool, I think I can say good luck. Well, again, that is just Liverpool. So how is Arsenal and see how we're doing for time? It's probably not necessarily great. It's not too bad. So how is Arsenal doing? And I'm talking about Liverpool like I'm going to pick them for the title. I'm probably going to pick Arsenal if I am going to make a prediction. So Havertz and Saka goals help Arsenal past Wolves. Game was weird though. Uh, Arsenal looked dominant in the first half. Second half, not so much. It felt like they were almost flat. There was like a 20-minute period where maybe not 20, maybe like 12 minutes, really. Wolves, frankly, were the team dominating the ball. There was a moment where Arsenal were not able to really get any kind of control on it. They were not able to press Wolves into mistakes. And actually, it was Arsenal that was turning the ball over. It was highlighted by a terrible kind of pass by, I think it was Saliba, right to Cunha. And if Cunha just hits it right at Raya, if Cunha's a little bit more composed on the ball, and this one maybe negative you can say about him is his finishing isn't necessarily there, uh, it would have been 1-1. Arsenal looked on the back foot in that second half, and then after a foul and after a free kick, I think it's someone like Thomas Partey wins the ball back, and then it's maybe someone fouls Havertz, and I think it's Thomas Partey who quickly takes the free kick. They're able to get the ball to Saka, and Saka's able to isolate someone 1v1. He's able to cut in and get it. He gets a rocket shot off. It's probably the goal of the weekend, at least individual. Really, really nice. Uh, Individual just rocket shot, and he does have that in his locker. He scored a banger like this, I think, a year ago in the opening game versus Nottingham Forest, if I remember right. And they needed that because that gave them the 2 goal cushion. Otherwise, this could have been a little hairy. To be honest, Wolves, you didn't really know what to expect from them. I've actually picked them in a couple like mock predictions as my third team to go down, and that's nothing against the club. That's nothing against Gary O'Neill because I like Gary O'Neill. And when I get to Wolves, I guess I'll expand on this a little bit more. The thing that I've kind of kind of noticed with him and Bournemouth, and maybe this is the reason why they moved off. Bournemouth moved off Gary O'Neill for someone like Andre Iraola, to someone that maybe has a little more kind of a structure to him. Is O'Neill's side seems to be structureless, and that's not necessarily to attack him a little bit, but that does mean he likes giving his guys a whole lot of freedom. Uh, a whole lot of free rolls when they have the ball. And when you have a lot of talented players, that can be fine. But he's lost. They've decided to move on from Pedro Neto. They brought in this guy Rodrigo Gomez, who showed some quality on the ball, but they don't necessarily. I don't necessarily know if they have enough. There's been talks of possibly about to lose Yao Gomez as well. They've lost Max Kilman. They brought in Kilman's replacement, and he had an interesting kind of debut as well. He decided to choke slam Kai Havertz, which amazingly enough was only a yellow card, and then he decided to basically assault Gabby Jesus by how can I say this? Having a little squeeze from the behind, I guess I can say from the back. uh, so I don't really know if this guy is going to work. Again, it's hard to really judge people by just one game. Wolves, they were competitive, but again, you don't really know where the goals are necessarily going to come from. I would be a little bit worried if I was a Wolves fan, but still time for them to do some business as well. And when I get to the little preview, I'll kind of touch a little bit on that. There was also a time where Wolves were just fully outplayed in that first half, and yet they were able to win the ball back. And there was a ball sent in, I believe, by Rangley Chen, and their lone striker Larson had a very nice header, and it forced an incredible save by David Raya. So who knows? I mean, this could have been maybe this could have ended kind of a 1-1 very ugly game. Arsenal were dominant, but you still see there's still ways for this team to improve, and I feel like they probably should get Mikel Merino over the line. I do want to see how this looks with Calafiori than necessarily Zinchenko because they were trying to use Zinchenko in midfield. They weren't really using Declan Rice as part of their build-up structure, which is fine. And they were using Thomas Partey a lot. You can play Partey and Jorginho if Partey's able to go for the season. That will definitely help them in my opinion. Uh, and so Arsenal look close. Maybe the one negative you could say was Gabriel, not Gabriel, Martinelli wasn't necessarily his best. And I do feel like if they're going to be in games where they don't really necessarily have the counter on where they can get in behind. If you have a little bit more of the ball and they do this field tilt kind of stuff, I honestly do feel like Trossard is the better play, in my opinion. I feel like he's a little bit more creative. I feel like he can go either to the byline or cut inside. He's not nearly as pacey, but I just feel like he's a little bit more of a bag of tricks, and I feel like he has a better shot on him. Uh, One negative you could say is Odegaard wasn't really involved, and that's maybe one kind of negative. You need to find a way to get him where he's not necessarily dropping so deep to look for the ball because that's still kind of a bit of a problem too. Uh, but it I'm not necessarily gonna be too negative on him because I have picked them to probably win. Havertz has actually really started to soar for them ever since Arteta did move him from this midfield idea, which hasn't worked, and I don't really get why they played it in preseason, other than it was a head fake. When he's been played in the false nine, he really did finish quite strong. I think he ended with something like 13 or 12ish goals. in the league. Maybe and I don't really know what he did in the Champions League. Uh, but a lot of that really did come after December, so that doesn't look that bad in that respect. And the way that Arteta was kind of the first one to do this kind of what you call like a box four kind of shape, and either it's basically him and Odegaard ahead, and then you have basically the pivot. And you have four, and usually what it does is it kind of crowds people playing a midfield three, like that 4-3-3. This really did give Liverpool fits. But the other thing that Havertz does, so he can be kind of a midfielder with the ball at his feet, but he's also 6'4", and he's lanky as hell. He's not. I'm not going to say he's going to win a lot of sprints, but he's got a stride on him. He's not gonna. Or I shouldn't say that. He's not going to win a lot of races, side to side. He's not going to be quick and pacey. He is. He is. He does have an ability, to get in behind, with that stride, and he's quite good at making runs into the box. And so I've been wondering, is Kai Havertz enough to take Arsenal over the line to do a title charge? Maybe he is, to be honest, because he's starting to put some end product away. He's always been good with his head. Now that said, it could have been this game could have been over even before the that Saliba pass. There was one moment when Arsenal were able to have a pretty nice counter. I think it was Martinez was able to find Kai Havertz into 5, maybe 8 yards from goal, and Havertz tried to open his foot, tried to go for the curler, and just completely mishit it out of bounds. So he can still work on his finishing, but I don't know. If I was an Arsenal fan, this does fill me with a lot of promise. Now they do need to maybe get that Mourinho deal over the line. All of a sudden, Sociedad is not a fun club to deal with, but at the same time, a lot of teams are starting to come for their players. So I don't really blame them for that. And if they do get Mourinho over the line, what do they do with Declan Rice? What do they do with Calafiore when they finally are able to play him? So there's still a ways for this Arsenal team to adapt and change. So that can always be positive as well. Another thing too is after Saka gave them the 2-goal lead and Arteta thought that was the game, he took Saka off. He gave Saka a little rest, and it's only 10 minutes here. But if he does that more throughout the season, that's going to matter when it comes in April. So again, lots of positive things for Arsenal fans to dig in on the opening weekend, and maybe not necessarily the best performance wise for the opening day, but the real test is next week. Unai Emery comes to the Emirates, I believe, or they go to Villa, whichever it is. So they play Aston Villa and they play Unai Emery, and they've probably got revenge on their mind. Not just Arsenal fans hating how Unai Emery started to have success with Aston Villa, but Unai Emery had success at their expense and possibly took away the title from Arsenal fans last season, beating them twice, I believe. I think they did take 6 points. So we're gonna see. We're gonna see how this is immediately. So that's game of the weekend, really. And so Arsenal win, Liverpool win. How was Man City? And Man City played Chelsea 2-0. No Rodri for Man City. Was it maybe going to be a chance for Chelsea, because when last year when Man City didn't have Rodri, it was open season on them. They lost all 3 games. No Oscar Bob as well. It looked like he has broken his leg, which is really unfortunate because he probably was their player of this preseason. To be honest, and he had the assist for that got City back into the game in the Community Shield just a week ago. So that really is unfortunate for the youngster. Foden was able to come on, played a half. Kevin De Bruyne back, and was Holland. So it's not a Man City goal without Holland. So I guess he's back. He's back to doing what he does. And speaking of strikers that are involved in the build-up, Erling Haaland, I think, had 5 touches at the end of the first half, but he had the goal, so he's not really going to care. But it wasn't a vintage City performance. I've seen a lot of people praising this. You can praise it because they were able to win without Rodri. So what Pep did is he played with Kovacic, and it looked like it was Bernardo Silva, and Pep actually went with something a little different. He played Savio and Jeremy Doku. So he set Phil Foden, basically played Kevin De Bruyne in kind of that 10 role. One thing you can say is, City do look pretty good on the wings now. It's only one game, or it's only a couple of moments to see Savio, but Savio or Savinho was quite good last season for Genera or Girona in La Liga. Uh, I thought he actually looked quite good for Brazil in the moments when he was able to play in Copa America, and he's got that kind of slick dribbling ability that someone like a Mahrez has. He's very silky on the ball. He can get past people. He looks very confident with it. It's not really something that the City have had when you have both people that can do that on the wings. I haven't seen that since maybe Sane and Sterling, to be honest with Sane and Gabriel Jesus when they were using him on the wing. Uh, I don't really know what that does for Phil Foden, but City did look a little dangerous, a little bit more on the wings. The other thing that they did was no Kyle Walker, and on came this youngster, Rico Lewis, and Rico Lewis, in my opinion, probably had a couple of their best moments in the Community Shield for them. He's a right back, and he's not just doing this Kyle Walker overlap shift. Rico Lewis is a midfielder, but he's also almost an attacking midfielder. He's the one that's oftentimes, being in near the box. He's making runs into the box, and he had a little bit of a role in the Holland goal because when Bernardo Silva gets the ball from I believe Jeremy Doku, Bernardo Silva is trying to lay it off to someone, and the only one that's really close to him is Rico Lewis. It ends up basically being a miss hit, and it finds Holland. And Holland's able to, beat Mark Cucurella and is able to lift it over the keeper. So that's how Man City were able to get their goal. But so these were positive things. I've been wondering what they're going to do because I don't really feel like they can do Kyle Walker at right back for an entire season. Maybe the idea is this kid. Now he is very small of stature, maybe 5'8", if that. So maybe he's not going to be the best defensively as far as maybe he can get something in the air when he has to defend a back post. But man, he's got such a quick lower body of gravity to him. He was and Kuko was trying to shake him, and he couldn't. I mean, Rico Lewis was getting everything right defensively as well, and this is a player that looks like maybe he's going to have a little bit more of a role. And yeah, if he's able to do that, he's long been a player that Man City fans have just obsessed about online. They've because they've seen him play for the last 2 seasons in a couple FA Cup games or Caribou Cup games, and they've been wondering why don't we see more of him? And and here you go. I think they tried him a couple of years ago at left back, and obviously seems a little bit more comfortable in not just the right back, but almost in kind of the right half space when Man City are attacking. So that is a little bit different. So that's where Man City are. Phil Foden was able to come on. It looked like he was playing a little bit more on the wing and wasn't really able to be that influential. But just first game, I don't really know how De Bruyne and Phil Foden are really going to be able to work together. That could be the only kind of negative. And De Bruyne was also a little bit shy. But also, again, City without Rodri is different. And that said, I already mentioned how Holland was able to get the goal. The second goal is or the ribbon on the cake came from Mateusz Kovacic, and that is kind of salt in the wound, as I use another kind of idiom, because Kovacic was a Chelsea player, and man, it really does have to suck for them because it's just I think it's someone, and maybe it's Wesley Fofana. Someone just kind of just goes along with it. And Man City are able to get onto the loose ball, and then Kovacic just basically on the dribble was able to just run past Roman Lavia, and or it's Caicedo and it's Enzo Fernandez, and then he's able to gets kind of near the top of the box. No one's able to to close him down, whether it's Fofana or Colwell. And basically, he tells Robert Sanchez to pick the ball out of the net, beating him near post from distance, and great goal there. Pretty positive for Kovacic because who knows if he would have even played if Rodri been available, and it looks like Rodri is going to be out till I believe mid-September. So this is going to be a different City side than necessarily we saw. Maybe it's a chance for some teams to go with them, and it's enough where Pep has already tried to make a change, and I've been long wondering what is Man City going to do because they haven't had a Gundogan replacement. I've harped on that for a lot of episodes now. I believe I touched on that when I did Man City in the preview, and it looks like they have finally maybe brought someone in that is going to be the Gundogan replacement. And without seeing him kick a ball, I made a joke about this earlier. Without seeing him, kick a ball, I can say he is the perfect person to replace Ilkay Gundogan. His spot in the team since he's left. Being the second player in the pivot that can also you know that can help you with build up early in possession. Very, very good. Very, very press resistant. But also makes very clever runs into the box and has a lot of finishes on him. Has goals in him. And the player that they've apparently brought back is that is the perfect Gundogan replacement. As I'm kind of running on, is Ilkay Gundogan himself. It looks like they brought him back from Barcelona. At least that's what Fabrizio has tweeted. So a little bit older. So who knows? And it didn't necessarily work out the best at Barcelona, but I can't imagine it's not going to be bad. Gundogan was very impressive in Euros for Germany as well. So that is a little unnerving, to be honest, because it looks like where Man City have been weak, they've been weak where they didn't have Rodri. I don't necessarily know if Gundogan and Kovacic is necessarily going to be good enough there, but they've also been weak when not having someone next to Rodri, and that is where it's dangerous. But the other thing too is, maybe they've been weak with Kyle Walker on the ball. Now you have Rico Lewis, and maybe they've been weak a little bit on the wings. And now you've got 1v1 monsters with Doku and Savinho to either create or to that would basically be it to take people on at the byline or get cut inside and to look to get those crosses in for Holland. And also, the more you have to defend there, the more you have to defend Holland. What does that do? That will open up a lot of things for Kevin De Bruyne for cutback balls near the top of the box, or someone like a Gundogan. Man City are probably going to be Man City again. And the reason why I think I'm going to pick Arsenal is I don't necessarily know if they're going to be hit with any kind of sanctions. I don't necessarily know if they're going to necessarily want to care about doing this 5 in a row stuff. It's possible, perhaps last hurrah. I think they're going to put all of their focus on Champions League. So I've been trying to assume that maybe Man City would not be able to keep doing this over and over again, and I've been wrong the entire time. So that's not necessarily great for my brother, who's a big Arsenal fan. But that's probably what I'll predict. And if that is the case, if maybe if they get hit with points deductions in January, maybe the Man City can finish third. Maybe someone else can catch them. But one thing I can say, and I think I said this last year, which was also not really a good prediction, is I don't see enough out of these three teams to win 90 points. I just kind of assume I don't think Arsenal can do what they did last year. A lot of the reasons why they were able to just continue on unbelievable stretches by reliant on a lot of set piece goals, and I don't really know if that necessarily is sustainable. But they have been, if they bring in someone like a Mourinho, they bring in Calafiore, who offers you a little bit more defensively, whereas Zinchenko is weak. Maybe that could be wrong, but we'll have to see. If anything, I feel like if Arsenal is going to win the league, I don't think it's going to be a squeaker. I actually think they could do it comfortably. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this all goes. So that is those three teams. For Chelsea on the other end, a lot of people were praising them. They were borderline awful, and yet at the same time, if Jackson's better in the box, they scored 2 goals alone. Uh, but I did not like what I saw. I didn't like what I saw in the preseason. I don't love Nkuku and Cole Palmer being forced out wide because neither are really 1v1 creators. Both of them want to play in the half space. Both of them want to work off other runs that have already happened. So I didn't love the shape. Neto came on for them in the second half. Actually offered a little 1v1 ability. Actually was able to, because he's a winger. Actually was able to get the better of Rico Lewis a little bit. There was a late kind of a cross back post that Rico Lewis had to defend, and I think he ended up even clattering into the back post. Otherwise, Chelsea would have scored there. Man City were gettable, and so that was kind of that's kind of the one thing, and they're gettable. It's not just by a strong Chelsea side. I actually thought they did not look the finished product. Jackson was quite good at creating some looks for them, but wasn't able to finish. That kind of reminds me of what I said last season. But the other thing too was this manager went with Enzo Fernandez as kind of his 10, and he's become a problem for them all of a sudden because I don't get how he works as a 10. I also don't understand why all of a sudden Raheem Sterling is completely shut out of the door. I mentioned that before. I feel like he's probably one of the better attackers. Madueke has apparently been shut out. Mudryk was getting a majority of minutes of the preseason. We didn't see him. Palmer, to me, on the right wing can work if you have someone like Gusto doing overlaps. Otherwise, I don't really love Palmer being forced to be all the way outside to receive the ball because he has to do a lot of work just to get near the box. And Cole Palmer is a someone that finishes stuff in the box or near the box. So I don't feel like that's the best way to play Cole Palmer. And Kuko's kind of the same way. I feel like he's kind of a 10, maybe second striker. I don't really love him, being forced to play on the wing either. So Chelsea have issues defensively as well. Fofana and Colwell, they lacked communication. They couldn't stick with Holland. Uh, and they've another thing too is they've decided Conor Gallagher isn't good enough, and fair enough, maybe so. But they brought in Kieran Dewsbury Hall, and maybe I'm just kind of a hater, but I another thing too is Chelsea brought in Roman Lavia after they brought in Caicedo, and I don't see how it works out. It's just too many players in the same kind of positions. It's too crowded. It's one thing to have depth. It's another thing to do this. And one thing with Cole Palmer, but one thing with Conor Gallagher is maybe he's not really the best on the ball. I don't really know if Dewsbury Hall is necessarily, Dewsbury Hall did have a lot of, I think he had like 22 plus, goals and assists in the championship last year. But Conor Gallagher is a beast out of possession. He makes up so much ground. Enzo Fernandez cannot do that. And Chelsea's spine in midfield looked nothing, really. Especially once Roman Lavia went off, that's where Man City were able to get their second goal with Mateusz Kovacic. So I didn't necessarily love this. Maybe I am being a hater. It's possible. Another thing too is Pochettino. What they had, Chelsea were legit good to close the season. And what they were doing is they were playing Conor Gallagher and not necessarily Enzo. So I don't really get how necessarily this works out. But we'll see. And then what else to kind of talk about? Brighton also had a debut for their coach, 31 years young, Fabian Hortze. And De Zerbi or not, Brighton are still good. They're still loaded with attacking talent, and it came, unfortunately, at Everton's expense. I haven't gotten to Everton in my preview, and I did kind of fancy them a little bit in kind of a little mock preseason. That looks kind of bad. I did have a caveat, though. I said they need to bring in a right back because I don't trust a 39-year-old Ashley Young or 34-year-old Seamus Coleman as far as I can throw them. And two, they have to keep Jared Braithwaite. And without Braithwaite, this goes from like the number 4 defense in the league last season as far as goals conceded. Now, a lot of that was kind of bunk. A lot of that was just Pickford. A lot of that was teams missing up. But at least as far as goals conceded, that's where they finished last season, believe it or not. It goes from that to being basically a back line that looks relegation level. And that could be a big problem for Sean Dyche. So they need to keep Braithwaite. All of a sudden, he's linked to different clubs, linked to a move. And also, they need to keep him healthy because he wasn't able to play because apparently he picked up a little knock. And so that's not good either because James Tarkowski James looked, England level good last season when he had a partner next to him that could do the runs in behind, that could handle the higher pressing, that could handle the back line. Because when Tarkowski has to play with Michael Keane, he looks like Michael Keane level good. Again, the center back pairing that started this game was not good. That said, it's not all terrible. Now it is a 3-0 kind of game, but Everton started the game actually, probably the better side. They scored only for an offsides to take it away. McNeil was on a breakaway after Decore was played in. Decore made the right decision to do a square ball, and McNeil unfortunately could only hit the post. Had the open goal, maybe McNeil puts that away. Everton get the first goal. Everton, I thought, were the better side for the first 25 minutes, and all it took was just kind of a counter. Really, Brighton looked a little bit out of place, a little all over the place, and it's basically a transition where, basically on the top of his penalty area, Mikayo Minta or Mitoma is able to get on the ball, turn with it, and basically he carries it and runs like 30 yards all the way to the halfway line. Then he's able to play it out wide to Yakuba Minta, and Minta play it on the right, and he's able to take on I guess it's Mikolenko, take on the Everton fullback. He beats him for pace, gets across to the back post, and lo and behold, the person that started the move 70 yards ago is Matoma, and he's able to box crash, back post. Ashley Young is just kind of caught in no man's land. Just lets the run go unmarked, and there you go, 1-0. And then things got a little bit worse because it looks like there was a moment when it uh, Everton had a shout for a PK or not. Yeah, the refs basically decided to just kind of ignore it, and then almost a couple minutes later, basically Brighton get a second, and it's a horrid pass that led to the giveaway by Danny Welbeck. That Danny Welbeck's able to put it away. I think it's who does there were two moments basically in between each other. It's there's there's Irabangnam that has a really bad back pass, and I think it's Idrissa Gueye. It might be even Idrissa Gueye for the goal here. So Everton's midfield did not work out. They were rough. It wasn't the best debut for Irabangnam, the player that they brought in from Aston Villa to replace Amadou Onana. But it wasn't just him. Idrissa Gueye was quite poor. I feel like James Garner probably should start for them. Somewhere. I don't really know where. The lack of play for Dwight McNeil was a little, the lack of involvement for him was maybe a little bit of a worry too. Uh, and then so things were not necessarily going great, but it was still only 1-0. And then Welbeck made it 2-0. And then after a long ball over the top that Ashley Young tried to chest down and just completely missed it. Matoma was able to get in behind him, and Ashley Young pulled him down, and there you go. There's the red card. So it went from it was just all bad after that point, and then Brighton were able to get a third after that with Adengua. Adengua came on. He didn't even start the game. He had to come on only because Minta was having a very good game, and then he basically got concussed. So people that are doing the fantasy stuff probably need to sub him out. Minta looked quite good though for his debut, but Adengua was quite good too. He came on and he showed he not only scored, he even assisted a goal at the very end as well, and that was only just kind of ruled out. So Brighton were good. The red card did help, but Matoma also forced it. The only negative to me was James Milner got to start in midfield next to Matt Zweifers. I didn't like that. I thought Milner had a bit of a mess up. Matt Zweifert was also a little bit of a hit and miss. He lost a lot of duels. One thing you can say is Everton are quite a physical team still. But that said, Matt Zweifert was also able to read. I think either a Irabangnam or either a Idrissa Gueye pass. He's able to read it, intercept it, and then he had the assist basically for Welbeck. So Matt Zweifers a little bit of an up and down kind of day. I would probably like to see Matt Zweifers and to Carlos Baliba, played in midfield instead, or maybe if they're gonna stick on to Billy Gilmore, probably him, someone a little bit better on the ball. James Milner just not. I get the idea of locker room vibes and vet leadership and whatnot. I don't want to see him at right back, and I probably if I'm a Brighton fan, I don't really want to see him see the field unless he's coming on at sub when Brighton already have the win, and you just need someone to just kind of see a game out. That would be just the other kind of negatives, but for the most part, Brighton start off quite well for the Fabian Hortze era, and Sean Dyche, it's not looking great. It's just they didn't look good though to start last season either, and I don't know. We'll see what they are able to do. The one reason why I was a little bit more kind of hyped up for them is again defensively they were good last year, and it's not just going to be Calvert-Lewin. They have someone like a Ndiaye that can maybe come on the bench if Calvert-Lewin's just doing enough. I do like Irabangnam from what I saw from Aston Villa a year ago. So it feels like he can only get better for them. I don't really love Idrissa Gueye. Maybe that's where James Garner can maybe fit in. You need to find someone to do it that's a little bit better on the ball because they weren't able to get Harrison involved in the second half. They weren't able to get Drake McNeil the ball at all outside of that one little counter chance. So still a lot of ways for Everton to improve. And then some other teams, Aston Villa, how would they handle expectations? Because they finally have some expectations on them. And for not a bad way to debut. And then John Duran coming off the bench was able to give them the second. And one thing you can say about Unai Emery is he will change a game, for better or worse. He's not afraid to make some big calls, and basically what he did is he brought on three players, and all three contributed to the game winner in Ian Matson, Jacob Ramsey, and John Duran. And again, this is just something he's just kind of known for doing, and known for being brilliant at doing it. Just kind of negatives. Ollie Watkins wasn't much involved, but that's okay. Aston Villa were borderline exceptional in everything but the final third. So I still think there's a lot of positives to take away here. West Ham honestly looked a side that was lost. Didn't seem like they had a plan, to play out of possession. The press was disjointed. Villa would really were enjoying themselves. Uh, it felt like they lacked ideas, but at the same time, and it was a quiet day for Jared Bowen and Mikel Antonio got the start instead of Fulkrug. But that said, despite being very outplayed, they were able to faction a PK, and I think it's Matthew Cash that gets caught, maybe fouling Thomas Suchek, and then Lucas Paqueta is able to convert. And the second half actually did open up a little bit. Somerville was able to come on. Kudus was able to create a couple moments, and if not for a couple really big blocks in the second half, uh, because Fulkrug had a header at the very end, Suchik had a header that needed a block. It's possible this game could have actually ended 2-2. So if nothing else, West Ham do look competitive, and it looks like they're competitive without being the finished product. So that's got to really be a bonus for West Ham fans, not really knowing what's going to be with what happened with the Lopetegui era. If you're an Aston Villa fan, this is the kind of game where it could have gotten away with from you, and instead Unai Emery was able to fix it. And one of the things kind of watching this is when I did my little Villa preview is I was hyping up, Ross Barkley being brought in, and he didn't even play. So my prediction praising him maybe isn't the best idea, because I was wondering maybe he was signing of the season kind of contender. He didn't play, and he's probably not going to play over Tielemans. One thing I could see is I could see him featuring a little bit more than John McGinn. Maybe you try Tielemans a little further ahead, or you try Barkley as kind of your number 10, or you have Emi Buendia. John McGinn offers very good work rate, but at the same time, he's not really the best in the final third. And I thought they were kind of struggling a little bit in the final third because they had full control of the game, and it was just that kind of moment. They weren't able to find Ollie Watkins the ball in space that much. They were able to get Liam Bailey the ball in behind, and he was able to get behind the keeper, and he just hit the post. And Liam Bailey. It looks like he possibly kind of tweak something. We'll have to follow if that's an injury or not. And Villa were able to bring on uh, you know, uh, the youngster to give him some game time as well. That's another sub that Unai Emery made. So Villa were not spectacular in at least the full game. For the most part they were quite good. But again, Unai Emery his subs came on and won the points anyways. It's a game that possibly Villa could have drawn. In the past, and another thing too is you forget how good John Duran is, because he takes this one. It's a very good run by Ian Maatsen, and Maatsen impressed in the Champions League final for Dortmund. And they brought him in from Chelsea, and you can see he was on loan at Dortmund, and it's a great little run by Maatsen. He's played the ball, and then he's able to find Jacob Ramsey, and Jacob Ramsey first time sent into the box, and it's not easy to hit this first time with the power and the accuracy that he does, and it's just a one-time hit. And someone else in that kind of situation, maybe he hits it right at the keeper, maybe he drags the shot wide. It's not the easiest chance in the world, and you forget how good John Duran actually is as a finisher, and we just haven't really seen him a lot. When I was doing my preview, I wasn't really focusing on him, to be honest. But they've decided to let go of Cam Archer, and so it's not going to be him. He is now over at I think Southampton, and they're going to ride it out with Ollie Watkins and John Duran, and we'll see how this works. Going forward. And as far as West Ham with Lopetegui, uh, another player that they've signed that I didn't even know about is Todibo, the guy that I've been spending the last year, talking about for maybe Man United, because he was so good at Nice, and Nice have Man United have like Nice owners now. Uh, he wasn't able to. He didn't start. Came on in the second half. The back line though could be Kurt Zuma, could be Todibo. They still have Kilman. They brought Kilman in for a lot of money, so he's probably going to be one that features. Midfield, still feel like is missing something though. So I feel like mid-table would probably be the prediction to kind of put them, but we'll see. They certainly recruited well. I can't say that. They've got a squad for Lopetegui to kind of mess around with. So that's kind of exciting if you're a West Ham fan. And it's it'll probably still take some time for him to get his ideas across. Fulkrug, when he came on, did look quite good. He felt like he offered a little bit more than Mikel Antonio, and so. I think positives for both fan bases for that game. And then you have Newcastle and Southampton. See how we're doing for time here. And okay, it's not. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do my preview. So 1-0 with Newcastle. Newcastle win despite being down and having to play down a man for 70 minutes. And I think that says a little bit more about maybe Southampton's level than maybe necessarily Newcastle. But I kind of had that thought before actually seeing the game. I just kind of watched some highlights. I actually did turn around and watch this for myself yesterday. And I actually, Southampton did more than enough to win the game. And even before Newcastle went down a man, Southampton maybe had control of the game. This was impressive, but it's also maybe a learning lesson here because you can play some really great stuff. You can pass around the back, you can beat teams trying to press you. 99% of the time for success rate, and you know who I'm going with this, that 1% that you mess up on, it can be the thing that kills you, and that basically is it. Alex McCarthy basically made 2 errors in the entire game. One was a bad pass 30 seconds into the game where it could have led to something, and the other one was basically 30 seconds right before halftime where he just passed it right to Ishak, just literally passed it right to him, and then Ishak's able to keep his head up, sees Joe Linton there, plays it to Joe Linton. Joe Linton has the great little turn and touch, first to collect it, and then the next one is just to swing his left foot onto the ball. Still required a pretty big finish, to be honest. It's not the easiest way to collect this. It's not the easiest way to finish, and that's what you need at this level, really, because Newcastle were playing down a man at this point. They weren't really able to create a whole lot of looks, and they were able to win because of basically this. They were to get that goal. They go into halftime, and then it was a whole lot of bunkering down. And Southampton, to their credit, did create a whole lot of looks, and so. Uh, I think if you're a Newcastle fan, you're relieved than anything else. You're a little annoyed that the red card even happened because I feel like at worst, in my opinion, it's either a double yellow or double sending off because both players, in my opinion, use you try to square up with each other, try to be all macho. Both lean with their heads. Basically, what happens is Bremerton Diaz is a little more theatrical. Goes down, makes it seem like he was the one that was actually headbutted. Both really did kind of lean into each other. And unfortunately, even with a video review, they assumed it, or they kind of determined it wasn't enough of an error to reverse the ref decision, which I don't really agree with, because you can tell it's theatrical. You can tell. Now that said, Fabian Schär shouldn't have done it. So there's no real sympathy for him, and it's bad for Newcastle because they were weak at center back before this, and now they've lost probably their best center back that can play on the right side in Fabian Schär. Now that they're already weak now. They've been trying to get Mark Gahey over the line. It looks like they're possibly linked to Joe Gomez now. Maybe they can look at someone else. Newcastle, in my opinion, have to get this right. They have to improve that back line because I don't think where they want to where they want to pursue this season, because there have been talks about getting back into Champions League. I don't think they have enough with that back line. And you kind of saw it. You kind of saw it a little bit in this game. Southampton created a lot of looks, despite being down a man, or this. Yes, they were down a man, but even before that, Bremerton Diaz was getting in behind with a lot of ease. Bremerton Diaz was able to get free into the box, and if not for and crosses were finding him, and if not for maybe better finishing, he probably would have scored on a couple. And so Southampton were able to create a number of looks, and it's not just them. There are a lot of teams that are going to look at Dan Burn at center back. Whether he's not playing at fullback, but Dan Burn at center back is still the same kind of issue. Now maybe he can do quite a good job defending in the box because he is tall. He is quite good in the air, but you can get around him. And I don't really know what they're going to do for the next 3 games without Fabian Schär because it was a straight red. It might be Emo Kraft. It's either Kraft or it's going to be Lascelles. So that doesn't fill me with a whole lot of confidence for depth. And it's a situation, it's a position that they've struggled in for a little bit now. Uh, they got really unlucky with Sven Botman getting that injury, and they've never really been able to replace him because he's never really recovered to be that kind of player. And Eddie Howe likes playing and pressing high. Eddie Howe likes being a team that tries to win the ball higher up, and you can't do that with this kind of back line. So I'm slightly a little more worried about Newcastle because they have a good squad. Otherwise, they've got a very good midfield with Joe Linton, with Tonali that's about to return, with Bruno Guimaraes, who was absolutely unreal In the second half. He's like the one player that just he always wins his duels. I already compared him to what Enzo Fernandez is supposed to be basically, uh, because he does win his duels. He does do his defensive work. He's very good on the ball. Uh, with Joe Linton, they're still playing Longstaff minutes. I don't think that's going to happen when Tonali gets back. So and you've got forward options with Jacob Murphy, with Eshak, with Callum Wilson still when he's available, with not only Anthony Gordon but also Harvey Barnes. And there's a lot of goals in this team. There's a lot of ways for them to win the ball back. There's a lot of ways for them to dominate teams with that midfield. It's just there's a lot of ways for other teams to be able to get at their back line as well. And the other thing that's kind of funny is watching the way that Minta has taken the flight for Brighton. It's maybe I get they had PSR issues, but it's looking like they probably could have tried to sell someone else, maybe sell Longstaff to someone, then losing Minta, because I feel like Minta possibly could have even taken the spot of Jacob Murphy. It feels like maybe they don't really have a lot of depth on the right if anything happens to a Murphy. Because I think the other option could be maybe Anthony Gordon. That doesn't feel like the best place to use Gordon. They've already sold Miguel Almiron, I believe, or they're about to. So he's not going to be in the picture going forward either. A couple other positives to say is Livermento and Lewis Hall were positives. Lewis Hall was little give and take. He was gotten at a little bit, but also he had a big clearing off the line in that second half because it looked like Nick Pope was beaten on a ball that was just kind of rolling in, and Lewis Hall was there to put it away. So that's kind of where Newcastle are. Still time for a lot of this to change. Maybe that'll be the maybe I'll do kind of a little bit of a prediction when the transfer window is actually over, because a lot of these teams just are not ready for a full season. Newcastle being one of them. If they can get it right, I can shoot them all the way up. If they don't, I'm gonna have to revise this a little bit. Uh, it's possible. It's positive also that they're able to play without Kieran Trippier. They're not nearly as reliant on him anymore. With someone like Livermento being able to play, also Livermento versus his former club in Southampton was probably a little insulting, a little bit. If you're a Southampton fan, and speaking of Southampton, it's a bit of a wake up call, but also possibly a gift because they were good. They look ready made for the EPL. One thing to say about these clubs coming in, because Leicester was kind of the Leicester. I can say the same thing. Now Leicester were not necessarily good, but they were able to get a point, which I'm about to get to. The clubs that have come in, because Ipswich looked, at least for that one half, they showed something to me too. Is these all three teams look way more ready to compete in week one than anything that the three teams that showed last year. And if you're a club that's been getting by the last few years by a lot of these promoted teams just being bad, that's not going to be the case this time. You're going to get caught. So it's possible that a couple of these could actually stay up. Well, we'll have to see. Southampton to me showed something, but at the same time, still got to finish. You got to finish at this level. It's not about being able to compete. It's not about competing with the Sharks. You got to be able to beat some of the minnows. Do they have enough goals in them? Bremerton Diaz actually did show that he can score at this level last season when he was on loan from Sheffield United. They brought in someone like a Cam Archer, who only was able to finish towards the only way able to come on the second half. They still have someone like an Alcaraz. They still have Carlos Alcaraz that we saw a little bit before he was on that side that was relegated. They still have Kamaluddin Sulemana as well, who he didn't even feature in this game. They still have someone like Samuel Udozi as well, former Man City prospect. So they have a lot of danger here. That does have EPL experience. That's something you can say about Southampton and Leicester that you can't really say about Ipswich Town. But another thing to talk about is, and I don't really know if this was the idea. Actually, it was the idea before they even went down a man, and then it actually helped them even more. They were playing Kyle Walker-Peters, who I have long argued is one of the more underrated players in the entire league. I've wondered why Champions League clubs or Europa clubs haven't tried to get this guy, because he can play right. He can play on the right back, right fullback, or he can play left back. And in this case, they played him like a left-sided Trent Alexander-Arnold. And what I mean by that is not just inverted. They focused everything around him in not just build up, in second phase buildup, and he was making some runs, forward as well. It was almost like a Rico Lewis, as well. Uh, and they played him on the left. So I don't necessarily know how often we'll see that, but man, did he show something because he was quite good as well. Just there were some positives in this, and it's unfortunate that there was a red card because had it only been a 1-0 kind of game where both sides had 11 players, I think a lot of pundits would have praised Southampton at the at the end of their kind of rundown, and instead they probably played the same way, but they lose, and they lose being up a man for the last 70 minutes, and that's why people probably went down on them. Also, mentioned Kyle Walker Peters playing on the left. The guy that they have on the right, Sigawala, looks quite good as well. He's someone to maybe follow, going forward. Quite looked comfortable on the ball and looked very good at getting in behind. He was giving Lewis Hall a lot of fits. And then we get to Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest debut for Dean Hjortsen. Uh, Already impressed. The 6'5" defender from Juventus looks quite good. Looks very very composed on the ball, but also he won like 10 of his 11 head aerial duels. Quite good defensively. We'll see how he does over the season defending in a high line. But he showed something already. He looks quite good. They said he was 2-footed as well, which looks very. When you're trying to pass from the back, that comes into play a whole lot too, because a defender's trying to press you to maybe go to the sideline because they assume you have a left foot, and then you can actually go towards the middle because you also have a right foot that can also release the ball. So, uh, lots of positives for Bournemouth here. No Dominic Solanke. They've sold him, but they already have brought in Evan Danielson, a Porto. So he has Champions League minutes. He's got Brazilian caps as well. All of a sudden, they just Bournemouth are right now an operation that is actually quite impressive. To be honest, I don't fancy them as far as what I look at, like how they can finish in the league. I don't necessarily think they're going to go down, but I don't feel like they're necessarily good enough uh, with possession on the ball. But I don't blame Iriola for that. I blame him having to work with maybe like a Lewis Cook, or in this case it was Alex Scott. Alex Scott was only able to go for a little bit, and then they brought on finally Ryan Christie, and Ryan Christie was probably their player of the season last year. Outside of Dominic Solanke, and Christie is able to get free, and he had the final cutback cross that was able to get into the box, cause a little chaos, and Semenyo was able to finish. Anthony Semenyo was played through the middle. That's probably not going to be the option because he kind of struggled a little bit. He looked like he liked playing a little bit more on the left side. Bournemouth have a lot of numbers that they can play, a lot of options they can play for their attacking options, but they don't really have uh, someone to play through the middle. So they brought in someone like a Jepson, and now they have Evan Danielson, and so no Dominic Solanke. I was really worried about that as well. I was also worried about them not having. I don't like Adam Smith at right back, and they apparently brought in Julio Araujo, apparently a Mexican player who was on Barcelona, who is now, I don't necessarily know if he got minutes at Barcelona, but apparently they got him in from here, and they brought him in, and he looked quite good. To be honest, so he'll be someone to maybe follow as well. Uh, and Forest, maybe look at this as probably having the game won and not just being able to see it out. So I don't really know what to necessarily look at them. I honestly feel like they'll struggle. Whether or not I don't necessarily know if they'll stay up, but I do think they'll struggle. They do have a good enough squad. I can say that they have a reliable number 9 that finds the net, because they get the first goal with Chris Wood. Also, he makes his runs on sides because what he does is he scores a goal that Nicholas Jackson could have scored versus Man City. There was a moment with Man City in the Man City Chelsea game where Jackson actually did put the ball in the net, and he just after a shot from Cole Palmer, uh, Ederson kind of spilled it. That's one thing I didn't say. Ederson had a really terrible game in that one, but it doesn't really hurt them. Uh, so Edison spilled it. Jackson was ball fell to Jackson. He was able to put it in the net, but he was also stayed. He ran offside. Here, uh, Chris Wood had a little bit more kind of a presence about where he was with relation to the last defender, and it was able to put it away. They have Nottingham Forest have two creators in Anthony Lenga and Cullen Hudson-Odoi, and also have Morgan Gibbs-White to play as a 10 or can play on any of the front three as well. they have fullbacks that get high and whip crosses in Nico Williams and Oli Aina. Willie Bolly and Mourinho are actually quite good together as a center back pairing. So it's just they have some pieces here. I just and I whether or not they're comfortable. I just they probably need to avoid injuries, and they did suffer a little bit with Aina, and Danilo had a really terrible injury in this game as well. I think he broke his leg. But looking at this is stronger than Everton. If nothing else, they're immediately stronger than Everton. I think they're stronger than Wolves, and that'd be kind of funny too because Espirito Santos is the former Wolves manager. And then to close it off, we have Brentford, or we also have two more games. So to close it off, we have Brentford and Crystal Palace, which ends 2-1 to Brentford. Massive result for them, considering they opened the season with Liverpool, with City and Spurs all in the first 5 weeks, which is gulp. No Ivan Toney on the bench, which suggested something was in the move behind the scenes. It looks like now it's come out that he's maybe accepted a move to join the Saudi league. Honestly, good for him. A lot of people have been attacking him for just kind of going for the bag. If you're Ivan Toney, this is something my friend brought up that I wasn't really thinking about. If you're Ivan Toney, not only have you've done the grind, you've played in all these divisions to finally make it here. In my opinion, he just had his England. He finally had his big England moment in the summer. In that second in that knockout game versus Slovakia, and he's someone that probably hasn't been playing on the highest wages for a while now. He probably doesn't feel like he also feels like maybe the league, let him down after they suspended him after the betting scandal. So he doesn't probably feel like he owes really anyone anything. And so if someone's going to offer him, generational wealth for both him and his family, it's hard to understand him just accepting it. And it's not people shouldn't necessarily look at that as a negative, especially in his kind of case, because again, I do side with Tony on the betting thing. You can't go with him for because it doesn't feel like he was betting on his own games. I mean, that would be a different thing as well. Uh, but the thing is you can't do the high and mighty stuff when they shirt sponsor on the club is a betting company. You invite this into the game. You do all this stuff with DraftKings and whatnot. You can't get you can't get all of a sudden preachy about players not being moral enough. Not so I don't have to necessarily do that rant, but with this case, no Ivan Tony. And Brentford have already signed his replacement, but his replacement, Ivan Tiago, is apparently out until December, so that's not great. But Brentford with the front three weren't bad. Where Weiss and Bremo have this little connection together. We saw it last season. We saw it in the beginning of the season before, or the end of the season before last, when Ivan Toney's suspension went into effect. And they've got a little of understanding together. And in this case, it was Kevin Shota that was played as the third in the front three. I feel like Fabio Carvalho can maybe eventually fit there, so maybe you can get away a little bit with this. Uh, they were lively, but I do think Brentford still have some issues in midfield, and maybe at fullback. Ayer struggled, and basically it's weirdly because he's 6'6", and his issues is defending in the air. It is unfortunate that they lost Sergio Reguilon because I feel like he was a big reason why they had such a big turnaround in that second half of the campaign last year. They're about to get Rico Henry back. That could help out, but he's coming off an ACL. Don't know how long it'll take him to actually return to normal. There's one thing to play. It's one thing to get back to where you are pre-injury. Fabio Carvalho minutes was positive. Only got a few. Dam Squad came on and actually was big. He delivered a crucial ball into the box, caused a little chaos. Crystal Palace weren't able to handle it, and led to basically the second goal that Weiser was able to score. Weiser being a fox in the box, but Weiser also set up the first goal with a brilliant little, quick little 1-2. He got fed the ball by I think Jensen, and then Weiser's first touch was to immediately play it for Embremo to run it behind, and then Embremo was able to take Mark Gahey on, was able to cut towards the goal, and had a brilliant finish, brilliant shot by Embremo. Brentford should be fine, in my opinion. Without Tony or with Ben Mee back is a big bonus as well. They were a better team with him, so they're finally getting some pieces back that they were missing last season. That was a big reason why they did struggle. You already mentioned how there's like an XG or expected points kind of graph out there that someone's done. Whether or not it's a stat geek, a geeky thing or not, whether or not you buy into that stuff or not. Uh, they said that Brentford basically underperformed their expected points by like 10 or 12 points. So, uh, if that said, if they can just get back to that, they should be comfortable in the table because there are a good side. Thomas Frank's really good at motivating his side. I do look at this midfield and think it is a shame someone like a Ross Barkley feels like he would have been absolutely perfect, to play him next to Norgard. Because I don't really feel like Jensen, Norgard, and Janelt, who they've been trying, is necessarily good enough on the ball. And there were a lot of turnovers. They did not have control of this game at all. And Palace really do have to look at this like a really really big missed opportunity. Also, they've all of a sudden started doing a whole lot of business with Liverpool. Uh, they brought Fabio Cavallo. It looks like they're about to bring in Sepp Vandenberg, who's also a right-footed defender who can come in and maybe play somewhere. But the other thing too is they the other thing too is I look at someone like a Tyler Morton on Liverpool. I feel like he could maybe offer something a little bit on the ball for them if they do decide to go there. Maybe they ask for a loan or something. Because Tyler Morton has they liked what Fabio Cavallo was doing for Hull City last season. Tyler Morton was his teammate, and Tyler Morton was quite good at finding Fabio Cavallo for Hull City last season. Now, that maybe doesn't excite Brentford fans, but you need to find a way to play Jensen. Jensen to me, it feels like he would work a little bit better if he was further ahead of the play, and instead, too often he has to drop all the way down because he's the only one that's really good enough on the ball. I like Christian Norgard a lot, but it feels like Norgard needs someone else to kind of play with to really progress with the ball a little bit more. They're not necessarily good enough, in my opinion, on controlling games. They need something else. Whether or not it was, Barkley could have done it. I feel like Tyler Morton maybe could actually offer this because Tyler Morton was fantastic. It really sucks for Brentford fans because another player that would have been able to do this is the player that they almost got back in June or back in July in Archie Gray, and we just saw Archie Gray get a little debut for Spurs. And man, what if he'd been able to? He would have solved a lot of this actually, and it really does. That is unfortunate they weren't able to get that across the line. But I do feel like Brentford should be fine. How about Crystal Palace? Crystal Palace without Michael Elise. Um, they have to look at this like they let one go. Kamada came in, and then we saw him kind of played in the Elise kind of role in one of the right-sided attacking spots, and he's not the same player. It looked like Eze was kind of the main creator, and he created a number of looks, and he was denied a great free kick goal because of an early whistle, so that was annoying too. Crystal Palace had to be really, really upset at this because they were straight dominant in the game in many parts, and then all of a sudden, Mbeumo was able to get that one chance really to get in behind, and then out of nowhere, it was a mirror from the first half to the second half, where again Crystal Palace were all over Brentford, and then just all of a sudden, just one kind of chance came in, and Brentford were able to basically snatch the points away. But that really is what this is about. When you get chances, can you take them or not? And Palace did have a number of looks, and Eze had a number of created moments. Eze was quite good. Maybe some people were wondering, was he a little too selfish? Maybe he could have played some teammates in. Eze was quite good still. Another thing too was Mateta had a very good Olympics, but one thing that comes when you have a very good Olympics is you play a lot of games right before the season, didn't get any kind of preseason, and I don't really know if he was taken out because of a precautionary, because he was on a minutes restriction, or maybe tweak something, but he had to go off. And on came Odson Edward. Odson Edward was able to get the ball into the net, and he was just offsides. Similar to Nicholas Jackson, where and that would have made it 1-1, or that would have made it actually 2-1 for Crystal Palace. So really has to frustrate Palace fans for being close. Ismail Assar, I feel like probably is more of the idea than necessarily Kamada. He was able to come on towards the end. He was able to give them a little bit more of a definite look. I do think like Palace will be fine. Eze is special if they can hang on to him. Adam Wharton also impressed. Not just really good in early phase buildup. He was part of the reason why they were just straight controlling the play. Also near the box, he was creating a couple looks. He got a couple nice shots off. Got a couple crosses and slip balls that were good. Palace was also able to bring on Check again, so that's positive for them coming off an Achilles. They have someone like Will Hughes. They have Kamada that can maybe play in the middle. They have Check They have Jefferson Lerma as well. So all of a sudden, Palace have really good midfield depth. Uh, and all those players know how to win the ball back and do something with it. The only negative is they all of this talk is about Mark Gahey maybe being on the move, and maybe that distracted him because he did not have his necessarily his best game. Maybe lucky not to be sent off as well because he went in for a challenge that was not quite good. So and he was duped by the Embremo goal and probably could have done a little bit better after the damn squad cross. So Palace will be fine. Just probably not the way they wanted to start the season after having some expectations, some hype around them. There's no reason to hype them up. I still think they'll be a really fun watch. Just probably not necessarily the success you would imagine. And it is unfortunate for them because who knows what they could have done with had they been able to keep Michael Elisa. But I don't know. We'll see how they are with Sar. Again, I imagine that Sar is going to be the one that plays instead of Kamada. But who knows? We'll see what Oliver Glasnow does, and if Mark Gahey does leave, or it looks like the Anderson has already left. Someone like Chris Richards, American, is going to get a lot of playing time. Whether or not that's good or not, we'll have to see. I imagine Palace probably need to bring someone else in. I keep wondering about Liverpool players. Joe Gomez could maybe come in here, but we'll have to see. And then we get to Monday with Spurs and Leicester. Pedro Porro and Vardy get the goals. Porro gets the first one. Spurs were purring. Spurs dominated just nearly the entire game, and yet all it took was one shot, and one shot was needed. I think so. Starting with Spurs, a mixed debut for Solanke. Lot of looks that he was able to create. Got on a couple headers, and just unfortunate for him, the heading was just right at the keepers. Got the ball in the box, had a couple nice cuts and turns, was able to get a shot off, and again, just right at the keepers. So uh, I think it's positive that you're able to get a lot of looks for him, but he's got to. It feels harsh, but if you make a big shtick, you want a big move, and you get your big move, you get a big move for big money. Uh, the expectations and the weight is a little bit more as well. So by it's a little harsh, but it feels like the criticism is going to be a little higher for him to deliver. So for first game, it's not the end of the world. Spurs were good. I will say that the Betancourt and Sarr midfield did not look great enough. They weren't moving the ball quickly enough. When Archie Gray's only 18. That's kind of the issue. But Archie Gray came on. He just the midfield looked much better. Big Ball came in as well, and just he had a mess up that nearly led to Leicester actually winning the game. But otherwise, I thought Bergvall was quite good on the ball as well. And just another issue was Brendan Johnson. Brendan Johnson at right wing. I feel like that's maybe the weak link. You have Kulishevsky. If you don't like him because Kulishevsky is very one-footed, he's always going to cut inside. He's not really going to offer you a lot of he's not going to get to the byline and give you a cutback cross for a striker like Solanke. They have brought in Wilson Odeberg, who showed he can be a 1v1 beast on either side, on right or left. Or you have Timo Werner. Werner actually came on in the second half to play on the right. So not the best showing for Brennan Johnson. A mixed bag for Spurs because they really did look good in that opening half. Just fully dominated the ball, kind of what you expected. Leicester had no looks, had nothing really, and you just wonder maybe it was going to be a big number. To be honest, all it would have taken was one. Uh, yeah, they Son looked quite lively and quite good, and he was able to get a couple looks as well, and just that the finishing, just everything was uh, just slightly off. And we'll see if that's just a one time thing or not. Richarlison, I mean, if things aren't going to work, they do have some pieces to change it up a little bit. Madison also started off being really good. Almost looked like Odegaard again for them. He looked and he it hit his ball that actually leads to the opening goal. And James Madison versus Leicester fans or versus his former club at Leicester. Leicester fans probably didn't enjoy that either, but Leicester fans get the last laugh really because the game was at Leicester as well. And as the game wore on, Madison wasn't really able to affect it a whole lot. Madison was dropping in to go for the ball because again, Ismail Sarr and Betancourt just weren't doing enough, and Betancourt finally was able to get his shot into the box, and unfortunately, he just hit it right at the keeper from about 5 yards away. And then, unfortunately for him, he ended up kind of uh, I think landing on his head. He actually had to be subbed off. But once he went off, Spurs started to purr again. There's a lot of something for Ange to feed on. Pedro Porro looked quite good. Udogi looked good in the first 15 minutes, and then after that, actually, the Leicester winger got a whole lot of the better of him in any kind of 1v1 duel. I think he contested like 21 total, and I think he won like 12. Udogi was doing a good enough job to be really, really high up, and so a lot of these duels happened, higher up field where I think his name is Fatawa Ishikata was maybe that's not his last name, but it's Fatawa, I believe. He was winning a whole lot of the duels, but it was as basically as like a last second defender. Uh, and finally, towards the end, he was able to do a little sidestep. He was able to make a cut, and it's his cross into the box that finds Jamie Vardy for the tying goal. And after that, actually, Leicester created another chance for Jamie Vardy where he just couldn't collect it in time, and I think he ended up either slicing it wide or mishitting it right to the keeper. Otherwise, Leicester actually could have stolen this. So Vardy the assassin, Fatwa Ishikawa, Isahaku. There we go. Really was impressive. And I do think one thing you're looking at this, you had a lot of these Leicester players that you remembered when they went down. So there's Jamie Vardy still. There's now he's like 38 now. There is Wilfred Ndidi still. There's Jordan Jefferson. Still there is the back line, Wout Faes as well. There's Vestergaard still. You looked at this. They've now got Harry Winks, though he didn't necessarily have his best game. Harry Winks for Spurs. Uh, there are a lot of players that all of a sudden you remember when they went down, and so they have EPL experience, if nothing else. I don't know as far as kind of where we are with kind of overreaction for week one. Uh, Again, I kind of said this last week. I don't really know if the winner will have 90 points or not. I feel like City really did roll their luck last season, but still favorites to win it all, but only slightly. Top six prediction. I'll go Arsenal. I did do Spurs. I'll do City. City, Liverpool, and then Spurs and Aston Villa miss out on fifth, and I hate doing that because I don't buy that at all. Newcastle, I don't know what to do with them. Villa, I don't know what to do with them either because again, both have improved, or at least Villa have definitely improved their squad, but at the same time, they shouldn't do worse than fifth, or they shouldn't do worse than fourth because they've improved their squad. But that game versus West Ham, it easily could have dropped points. You don't want to pick teams that are going to just drop points. Newcastle are going to score a lot of goals, but I feel like they're going to concede a lot if they don't do something with the back line. But I'm doing this thinking that they do get Mark Gahey across the line. We'll have to see how it goes. I'll do a different prediction. I'll do an official prediction when the transfer window has done. That'll give me a little bit more of a shot here. Here's one though. Brighton finishes above Chelsea. I think I'll go with this one. I've seen one of the Chelsea fans online that's been trying to talk about smaller clubs not being good enough, and very very smug. I don't really like it. He's going after Brentford on as far as kind of just doing maybe a hate click kind of rivalry. He's been going after Brighton as well. Chelsea have done all this stuff, taking Brighton players, taking Graham Potter as the coach, taking Moises Caicedo, uh, and targeting other players. They were trying to get De Zerbi last year. I think Brighton are going to finish above Chelsea. I think I've seen enough. I don't understand what this Chelsea project is. Maybe they finally turn things around. They have a lot of players. To be honest, they didn't play well. They could have beaten Man City. That shows what they possibly can do. Uh, I don't really know how much I believe in this Enzo guy, but I could also be saying that because all of a sudden I'm looking back at what they finished with Mucho Pochettino, and I feel like they were a better team with him. But who knows? We'll see how that goes. Uh, for relegation, I think I said Southampton, Leicester, and then Wolves. But I also think it could be Fulham and Everton still there, and I'm saying that now as someone that actually thought Everton was probably going to be a sneaky pick for maybe top 10. But they've gotta have Braithwaite go the entire season, and they also have to figure out a way to not play Ashley Young for any kind of fullback minutes at all, or this isn't going to work. I feel like they also need to find a way. They've lost Amadou Onana. They need to find a way to get a little bit better in midfield. So, and that maybe be like the only thing about Aston Villa as well. They have a beast like Amadou Onana, and eventually they can bring Barbecue Kamara back in as well. But they have a bit of a misbalance. They're very good without possession, with John McGinn being that third in there to win the ball back. They're missing a little bit. Tielemans can't just do it all, and right now they're relying on a lot of Tielemans to be able to progress the ball, or they're doing a lot of long balls to Watkins and Leon Bailey to kind of to be their uh, kind of progressive outlets. In this game, they also had Morgan Rogers that they brought back, and he looked pretty lively as well. So Villa, if you run a roll with Villa to get top four again, despite having Champions League, you could do that because they have a big enough squad to handle that. So we'll see. Well, I mean, again, I feel like Unai Emery is a top three coach in the league, so it wouldn't be the worst idea to pick Villa to finish. Maybe they finish above Liverpool. To be honest. Uh, as far as other teams, I don't love Fulham's roster in depth. I already talked about that. Uh, but a bit like with Dyche, Marco Silva is a coach that just continues to prove me wrong, and I do feel like if it comes down to coaches between Sean Dyche, Marco Silva, or Gary O'Neill, it's hard to not pick O'Neill, and I don't like doing that. I really don't. But I don't know. There's still a lot of ways for this to completely change. It's a very, very long season. It's just week one. And I did go a little bit above, so I'm not going to be able to do my mini little preview because I don't want this to go way too long. I think I've already talked about where I kind of see where everyone is, so I'm just kind of end with that, and so that'll be just kind of where we end with. And so thank you for tuning in. I'll be back next week to maybe back to a little bit more of what I normally do. Though this wasn't too bad. Anyways, until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.